guys, and welcome back to the Only Successful Events show. And today we have on Brandt Krueger. I have him on today because I want to discuss a topic that most people don't even think about when it comes to events. You know, we're very worried about cybersecurity when it comes to our credit cards, when it comes to entering our information online, but we really don't think about it as event producers or even event attendees. So I definitely wanted to have Brandt on. I know he's been very vocal in education around cybersecurity. So first, before I just keep rambling, welcome to the Only Successful Events show, Brandt.
Hi, well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Can you give us a little bit about your background? How do you find yourself in AV and in events especially?
Sure. So I've been in this crazy industry that we do for over 20 years now. I started fresh-faced out of college working for, first a hippie guy that was doing audio for corporate events. But my real career started when I started working for an event production company out of Minneapolis. And I worked for them for about 18 years in various capacities, including setting up events, working in the shop, building sets and props, custom things like that. But there was always kind of a techie bend, and that's part of just who I am. I've always had kind of a techie bend to everything that I was doing. I was literally the guy running in and being like, have you heard you can now put 5 CDs into a single player and you can hit shuffle and you can get dinner jazz all night long without having to, go out and change the tape or something along those lines. So definitely always looking at our events from a technological standpoint. How can we use technology to improve our events? We were very early on with that company doing interactive games, trade show booths that had like computer games in them that I was literally coding in Flash and running in the background. And so when I left them about 5 years ago now, all on good terms, to go out on my own, I've still kind of continued to go forward doing both consulting in technology and audiovisual services, but also as a technical producer. So the technical producer, the short answer is that's that person on your team who's kind of a little techie and helps you get your AV bids and things like that. A lot of people have that person on their team. A lot of people don't. So that's kind of where I'm at now is still very much in the audiovisual and production world. If you can't afford a full production company, maybe you just need a guy that can get you 3 or 4 AV bids lined up and make sure that you're getting the best deal and then be there on site to make sure it all goes off well. I'm your guy. That's kind of how I got to where I am at the moment.
And I'm so glad you just kind of explained that a little bit deeper for me, because I wasn't sure if you were the full company that we would hire, but that makes complete sense. And definitely a lot of our listeners could use you as a resource. So I know that you have won some big awards in the industry. 2019 Trendsetter from Meetings Today magazine, 100 most influential people in the event industry. So you've been here for over 20 years at the same location for 18 years. You know your stuff. Before we jump into the meat of this, I'm curious, what made you, after 18 years, leave and start your own thing? That's a big jump of being an employee to entrepreneur.
It was a big jump, and believe me, there were some serious conversations with my wife that weekend that we kind of made the ultimate decision. The long and the short of it is, like I said, I'm still on good terms with that company. I still actually do show calling for that company, so I'll be the guy on the headset calling the cues for them on a lot of their major shows, and so they're a good client of mine. So the short of the story is that it was a fork in the road. I had been doing podcasts and speaking at conferences and things like that for a few years at that point, and they wanted me to head up a new department, and it was going to be like a content creation department. So it was going to go from, being on site and calling shows and helping set up and being that part of that, on-site environment, as well as the podcast and the conference and all that kind of stuff, going from all of that to sitting in a dark room creating PowerPoints for 9 hours a day. And, I do enjoy that work. I do enjoy creating content and things like that, but I wasn't ready to commit to that. And if I did commit to that, I was going to have to give up the podcasts and all of that kind of stuff. And so there was no way I could get 5 years down the line and go back to that moment in time. My social network, right? My social capital at that point was at an all-time high. And if I got 5 years down the road of not doing podcasts and not doing conferences and things like that, there was never going back in time to that moment. And so that was really what kind of crystallized it. Is it's now or never, so to kind of go out on my own. And that is scary stuff. It's scary stuff. Like I said, it was the subject of many intense discussions around my house.
Did you always have the entrepreneurial gene, or was it kind of you were in that fork in the road where you had to make a decision, or was it always inside you?
I would say it came later in life, but because I was perfectly content, and I wasn't unhappy, working for the company. It was funny though. Only a few months later, my wife looked at me. She said, "You seem so much happier now," and I wasn't unhappy in my old job in any way, shape, or form. But I would say it definitely came later because early on, I started with them when I was 22, and it was like, well, I think I'll do this for a couple of years and just see how it goes. And then, it's 5 years later. It's like, well, 5 years, okay, that's a nice number. I can reevaluate after, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and just see if this is what I want to keep doing. I'm still not even sure about this business, this event business. It's kind of a lot of weirdos and stuff. And it's And I just kept doing it. And I kept doing it. And I think a lot of it is because I do love the industry and because I do, did grow to really appreciate it as it is. And then later in my career, as I said, when I left after 18 years, I'd been doing these podcasts and conferences and things for maybe only 5 years at that point. And so one of my biggest professional regrets, I'll just throw this out on the table right now. One of my biggest professional regrets was not networking in the industry earlier in my career. That I didn't start doing it until I was, in my late 30s, and I'd been working there for 15 years. And so, and there's and I discovered this whole world of these amazing people that do what we do, on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And, I've made so many incredible friends in the industry since I started doing that. And so I know I've kind of rambled off what the original question was, but that's a really important point to me that, it's the entrepreneurial thing that I think that's what's helped drive it, right? Is like meeting people who've done it before. I was so lucky that when I did go out on my own, I had fantastic friends already that had been consultants, that had been freelancers. And I got so much good advice from them that I didn't feel like I was really doing it on my own.
I love that. And I just want to point out something to those of you that are listening, because I have run into a lot of people where if they are going to network with somebody in the same industry or the same field, for instance, like wedding consultants, for whatever reason, they don't want to help each other out. I've just seen a lot of that happen where I really want you to expand your horizons a little bit, not just network with other people that complement your business, but network people that are doing the same thing as you. You never know when they have an extra job they want to hand off, or they have a resource that you need, and vice versa. And really, there's enough business for everybody. So definitely make connections early on and with everybody. So thank you for sharing that story. I want to jump into a little bit of cybersecurity. So why should us as event producers worry about cybersecurity?
Well, and this has been, obviously it's been in the news a lot over the course of the last year, but this has really been a passion of mine for several years now. It drives me absolutely up a wall that we still have venues and airplanes and things and hotels that don't have a password on that Wi-Fi. It's just like, it's such a, and I remember, how it started. It's because, they didn't want to deal with people coming down at 3 o'clock in the morning going, I can't get on the Wi-Fi. Why doesn't the Wi-Fi work? At this point, though, people know how Wi-Fi works, right? That some Wi-Fi networks have passwords, some don't. We get it at this point. We know how it works. So it's inexcusable to me that we're still having open Wi-Fi networks. And I want to be really clear about what I mean about that, because this is kind of the kernel of my cybersecurity journey. It's not logging in and then getting the hotel splash screen that says, what room are you in? That's not a password. That's not security. It's not logging on to the conference, network and then being asked, okay, what conference are you in? Please enter a password. No, that's not putting a password, that's not entering security. So if the first thing you hit isn't that, iOS pop-up or your phone pop-up saying enter the network password, if that's not the first thing you get, that network is insecure. Just going in and putting your room number or putting a meeting code or something like that is not securing your network. And it's way better than it used to be. But back when I first started getting into this stuff, even 5 years ago, almost nothing other than banking transactions was using this like higher security level, right? Using the HTTPS. And it's only been through a concerted effort of Google and others that have really promoted this idea of HTTPS everywhere. So it used to be, if you were on those Wi-Fi networks, you could just read everything in plain text. I mean, unless it was a banking transaction, you could see emails flying back and forth. You could see people posting Facebook messages. You could see everything in complete and utter plain text. Now, it's way better than it used to be, but it's still inexcusable at this point that you wouldn't. So even this is what I like to say. So, and this is one of my big soapbox moments. So forgive me for droning on a little bit. But even if your password is 12345. And even if you print that password on every single piece of paper for your conference, and it's in the app, and it's on the toilet paper in the bathroom, it's everywhere. Even if you put it everywhere, that's still more secure than not having a password at all, because it just turns on basic level encryption on the actual access points and in the Wi-Fi connection itself. So that's my little soapboxy thing of how I started to get into cybersecurity. It's just this fact that it's such a simple thing that we can be doing to protect our attendees' data.
Well, I love people that say, I have nothing to hide. I don't care if my stuff gets out there, but you actually do a lot more stuff that you don't realize, or there's a lot of information that is on your phone that people can get. So it's definitely something. Like, I'm glad you went on your soapbox, because it's something that people are like, oh, no big deal. We're just going to log on to check Facebook. But there's a lot more information in there that people can see.
Well, April, you've just teed up the second most important points of what we're talking about here when I start talking specifically about events. So, yeah, you've got stuff on your cell phone that you might not want. Maybe I don't have something to hide, but I wouldn't want somebody getting my credit card information or something like that. But no big deal. I mean, somebody gets in my cell phone, what are they going to do? See pictures of my kids? No big deal. But we as event people have to start changing our mindset on this, because we are responsible for gold. And the gold that I'm talking about is our attendees' data. So when we start thinking about especially corporate events, where we're talking about the kind of access to data that the planners and the planning team have, the registration team has, we're talking about first name, last name, home address, flight times, spouse names, kids' names, title, email address. All of these things are gold to a hacker, because what they can do then is, if you can figure out, okay, who's the CEO? Who's the CFO? Here's their home number. Here's their flight time. Okay, great. Then you could craft an email that looks like it's coming from the registration company, or you craft an email looking like it's coming from the CFO, saying, hey, Cindy, I see that you're coming in on the 3:15 flight. I really need you to take care of this wire transfer. It's going to be going through while you're in the air. Can you please just click on this now? Okay, we're used a little bit to those kinds of phishing things, so that maybe raised some red flags. Okay, wire transfers, you never ask for wire transfers. But how's this one? Ms. Jones, we see you're landing at 4:15 on the Delta flight 1787. We're arranging the transportation to get you to the conference. Can you please click here to verify that that's the time you're coming in? We'll make sure that the limo is standing by. That's a little bit more, okay, I might click on that, right? Especially when they've got that level of detail.
And I know that people are listening now and are like, who has time to go and do all of this stuff and arrange and orchestrate all of this in the back end? People are doing it. People are doing it every day.
So we're not the targets. We're not the targets. Our attendees are the targets. The companies we represent, and as we start as events, started to take this trend towards being, marketing activations and things like that. There's a lot of big money for a lot of big corporations being spent on meetings and events. And that, that data, that access to that gold of, who, what, where, when, and how is what the hackers are looking at for. Target Target wasn't hacked directly. They were hacked through like an HVAC vendor. Home Depot wasn't attacked directly. They were attacked through their point of sale system. So likewise, it's not that people are going to go in through the front door of IBM, Microsoft, Google, or things like that. They're going to come in. We're the side door, right? We're the side door to that information, to getting in, and hacking those companies.
Wow. So as an event producer, so we go to a venue, they, give us the meeting code for the conference room. Can we request a password, or how do we, I know it's our responsibility to take care of our guests. And, most of us have thought everything's completely fine. Everybody's doing it anyway. This is how it's always been done. But now we need to open our eyes and know that it's our responsibility. How do we take the steps to make sure that our guests are protected?
Yeah. So step one is to acknowledge the problem, right? This is always when we're going through the steps of recovery or anything like that, we always have to acknowledge the problem. And so step one is what we're doing here, right? We're raising awareness. We're saying, hey, look, folks, this isn't the job of some nerd down the hall. We all need to start taking responsibility for the security of our events, just like we do the physical security of our events, right? We're hiring, physical security people to be hanging out. Depends on the level of the guests, the level of the executives are going to be there. Same thing. So how important is that data? How important are the people that we're talking about? So step number one, yes, let's absolutely get that Wi-Fi password on there. That's just for me, that's table stakes, right? That's a basic level thing that we've got to be doing at our events. You absolutely should ask, and they absolutely should be able to do it. It shouldn't be an extra charge, in my opinion, right? You should be able to say, a lot of savvy planners are already putting in, hey, we need you to include Wi-Fi for all of my guests and all that kind of stuff, and you're not going to charge us. That's just part of the RFP. I would throw in a private, secure Wi-Fi. Just add that couple extra words in there to make it go. The next thing that we have to do is we have to start being responsible for our own data. So as we're looking at things like registration platforms and event apps and other technology, you don't just write the password down on a sticky note and hand it to the temp staff that came, to help out with your event that day. Make sure that you're paying attention to who has access to that information. How is it being transferred? Use a password manager. That's like my number one. I've had a lot of number one things in here. I can't keep calling them number one things. My other equally important suggestion is to have a password manager on there.
Which one's your favorite?
I use LastPass. LastPass, there's a lot of them out there. Don't use a free one. So you get what you pay for. So use a paid service. That's kind of a good advice for all of your technology needs. Is chances are, if you can't figure out how they're making money off of you. So be sure and use a paid service. LastPass has been vetted by security people. I can't say that I know, but security people that I trust that are out there in the industry. The biggest question that people ask about password managers is what happens if the password manager company gets hacked. LastPass does not store your data in a way that they have access to. So if you lose your password, they have some ways of printing out temporary passwords that you can stick in a safe somewhere. But if you lose the password, they're like, sorry. I mean, someone could literally walk in and steal the servers out of the room and not be able to access your information. So that's called trust no one encryption. It's the best way to do it. So even government actors, subpoenas, thieves, whoever you might want not to have that data would not be able to get it. So that's definitely the one that I can recommend. A lot of people are good with Dashlane and a couple of other ones as well.
So we watch who we're giving the passwords to. If we're writing them down, we're watching who we're giving to. Hopefully we're using LastPass or another service like that. We're asking for a private, secure network. Is there anything else that we should be worried about?
Yeah, I mean, so my buddy Will Curran, who owns Endless Events out of Phoenix area and New York area, he and I do full-on hour-long sessions on this, to be fair. So there's always, believe me, if you keep asking me, I will just keep giving them to you. So just fair warning on that. So that's definitely one. So I would say another one that often gets neglected along the same lines of just paying attention to who has your data is I can't tell you as an AV person the number number of times that I've just been handed a flash drive with a PowerPoint presentation on it with like sensitive financial information on it. I do have some like high-end clients that are really fussy about, having like secure flash drives. You have to punch in a code in and stuff like that, and have asked their, vendors to sign off on data retention policies. But still, the vast number of times, the vast majority of events that I've worked on, it's like, yeah, here's all of our, predictions for how we're going to do next year. And we're a public company and, all that kind of stuff. So really just be careful, be thoughtful about the data that you're presenting. Be thoughtful about the fact that, you're going to have however many hundreds of people in the audience with a camera in their pocket, that could potentially take pictures of, not just embarrassing stuff like a horrible skit that's gone wrong, but also financial information. I think we tend to think more about the embarrassing stuff, but, that could be embarrassing as well. If you're saying, hey, guys, we've had a terrible year, how are we going to deal with this? And then, somebody takes a picture of that, slide with a graph, going straight down, and then, that gets tweeted out somewhere. So just being careful about your company's information as well, if you're a private entity like that.
And, I really love that you are using the phrase, be thoughtful. Definitely be, the reason why I'm bringing this up again is because most people don't think about this. I've been doing events for 18 years at this point. And we have a lot of different speakers, and most speakers just have the same flash drive. They stick it in their computer. They give it to, you're right, the AV people. And it's the same one that they're using for everything. So maybe they have a kids project on it. Maybe they have their budget, whatever it is. Yes, for the most part, we want to say that we trust the AV people too, but be thoughtful about every little piece that you that you do and what you're doing, because I don't think people until today, honestly, not that I would do it, but I wouldn't think twice about it if I didn't have a new flash drive around and I had one. I would probably be like, okay, just go to that file. So like the little points like that are gold to me.
Yeah, I know someone in the industry who actually treats flash drives as disposable. She's like, I don't want them back. Just, take it, because she doesn't want to mess with, getting a virus or something like that being sent back via flash drive. And that's absolutely a thing. So I think the biggest thing is what we've already, talked about there, and what you just hit on as well, is, again, just raising that awareness that, hey, it's all of our responsibilities. It's not the responsibility of the vendor. It's not the responsibility. We need to be asking these questions. So you need to ask your AV company, what's your data retention policy? What happens to these laptops after it's done? Do they just go on to the next show, or do they get wiped? And that's a double-edged sword too, because I've also been in the situation where I've had someone come back to me and be like, hey, is there any chance you've got that PowerPoint that we used last year? I shouldn't, but let me check and see if it happens to be in this folder marked old, where stuff gets thrown off the desktop. It's that kind of thing. So it is, you just have to be, if you're going to ask your vendors to get rid of stuff, then you also have to be much more vigilant about making sure you get a copy of it before it goes away.
Absolutely. And also that's a question that I've never asked either. And I've spoken at many different things and produced many events. What do you do with the content after? Or data after? So thank you for all of these little tips. I want to know what you think about third party versus in-house AV, because I know that a lot of people, especially in like the thought leader industry or the people that are producing conferences for themselves, they really almost always get brought into the hotel AV or the venue AV versus bringing in their other person. And I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it's another one that I could literally talk for an hour about. So what's funny is I mentioned Will, and the way that he and I started speaking together as kind of a duo was that we did a presentation called AV Smackdown, in-house AV versus third party. And the original idea was that we were going to get someone from in-house AV, and then he'd represent the third party, and I'd be kind of the neutral, referee down the middle. But with all of the acquisitions that have been going on, the mergers that have been going on, it became more and more difficult to actually get people to speak on the record as a representative of an in-house AV. And I totally get that. I mean, these are big companies involved with big wallets and big lawyers, behind them. So you don't want to be, Mr. AV guy, getting busted because you said something stupid in a conference presentation. So, for me personally, I believe that there are pros and cons to each model. So for me personally, I believe that there's a time and a place for each model. That each model has its pros and cons, and so that's what kind of we were trying to flush out in this presentation. There's the pros of the in-house is that it's easy, right? It's there. It's all in one master bill. It all goes together. They know the space intimately. Like they know, okay, the third plug from the left, you got to go over and jiggle the cord a little bit because that's a little loose. All of the quirks and intricacies of the venue, they're going to know because they're literally there day in and day out. The disadvantage that everybody knows is cost. So the actual cost of the in-house provider tends to be more expensive, and that's pretty easy to explain away as well because it's convenience, right? So you can go to the lobby bar, at the hotel, the little lobby store, and you can buy, a candy bar, and it's going to be like $8, right? Why? Because it's convenient. It's there. It's the same with the mini bar in the room, right? Those gummy bears just look amazing at about 11 o'clock at night after a couple of beers, and they're $9. And you know what? It'll go on the master bill, and no one will even know that it's there, and it's just fine. It'll be fine. It's because of that convenience that you're paying for that, paying extra for that service. Now, where I do get frustrated is when you get locked into that. There's nobody forcing you to buy that candy bar in the lobby store. There's nobody forcing you to buy those gummy bears. You're just as able to go out the front door, walk down the street, go to 7-Eleven and buy a pack of gummy bears, right? So I get really frustrated when venues lock you in and say you have to use the in-house AV. Well, can I pay you a fee? No. Can I buy you out? No. You have to use the in-house AV. That's where it gets excessive to me, especially with all the mergers and acquisitions going on. That starts to feel an awful lot of anti-competitive going on there. And then again, that's me coming as someone who doesn't have a dog in this hunt, whatever metaphor you want to use. I don't care. I want to use whatever service is going to be best for my clients.
My favorite is when you have to use their company, but then they want to charge you a minimum set of hours for so many people when they're really just plugging in one thing. I've had, working with a lot of convention centers, they have a mandatory so many people that you have to use for so many hours, even if it's just a half an hour worth of work. So that's one of my biggest frustrations. The other thing, on the event producer side, there's definitely a time and place when you want to use the hotel AV. Like if it's just a simple meeting and you just need a projector and some sound around the room, or if you're just flying in for the weekend and doing a quick workshop. But I'm all about repurposing your content. And really, when you have someone masterful in the back of the room and you can do different angles and, the quality is just so much better. Everything is better for future use. That's kind of where I, depending on the type of event, that's how I feel.
Oh, you're not wrong at all. I mean, and that there's definitely, again, that's what I mean is that there's pros and cons to each model. So if you're just doing a one-off event, that you're never going to be doing it again, you're never going to reuse that footage, or maybe it's just for archival purposes or something along those lines, or it's breakout sessions, where we record it, and if it turns out great, if it don't, no big deal. It's not mission critical stuff. But if you're an event that's the same event every year in a different location with like big time players, it's an awards recognition event or something along those lines, where it's the same executives, and you want that AV team to develop a relationship with those executives, make them feel comfortable, help them with their PowerPoint presentations, all of those kinds of things. All of that value add stuff that a good solid AV team. It's not that they can't do that, but you get that with that traveling, being able to move with them. You get that consistency from event to event. So those are the trade-offs, right? Is that kind of ease of use, and it just all goes on the master versus, the consistency, and I don't have to, worry about the crew from year to year or that kind of thing. But you pay for that, right? You pay for that convenience.
Absolutely. And truthfully, I love not the convenience of having the venue AV, but the convenience of having an AV team that has worked with me on past events. If they know, okay, April's going to get mad that she's doing all these video, I'm recording all this video and her hair is over here. And I know, she said something about that last time. Or make sure you're standing at this part of the stage when you're doing this part of your offer, things like that. So I love the convenience, like you said, of building that relationship. I do use Hotel AV quite a bit when I'm flying for the weekend, need something quick and dirty and just get it done. But when I'm producing something big, I need my team.
You've got your go-to team. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that people should look for when they're looking for an AV company?
Ooh, that's a tough one because it depends on what your priorities are, right? So, a lot of times I've met plenty of these clients where priority is budget, and also budget. So they're frequently looking for the cheapest as opposed to the ones that's going to deliver the most value. I've also had plenty of clients where that they see that, right? They see the unmeasurables, they see the intangibles, they see the value of the people, they see the value of the personalities, just the little things of like not charging you for every roll of tape that gets used, just knowing I've got a box of tape, whatever do you need, take what you need, go ahead, not getting fussy about the little stuff. So I'm always looking for partners. I mean, it's a word that frequently gets overused in our industry. It's like, no, we're not a partner. You're hiring me to do stuff. But I do definitely try and look for partners, ones that I can say, hey, this one, I got no budget. What can you do for me? And then on the next one, I'll try and catch you back and mean it, right? Not just be constantly chiseling for price. But hey, literally this one, I've got nothing. What can we do to fit within this budget? And then the next one that comes along where I've got a little bit more, I'll try and get it to you and work it all out so that it truly is a partnership. It's a relationship. It's people, meet the people, That's one of them, talking about in-house versus third-party AV. One of the funny things to me is that nobody ever requests references for the in-house. You've got just as much reason to ask for references of the in-house, if not more. So go to your venue and say, you want me to use the in-house? Great. I'm going to need to see references. I need to see, let me talk to one person who's had a similar sized group that had a good experience. If they can't produce that, how can they force you to use their AV team if they can't produce one person that had a good experience out of the last year?
I love that because you're sharing all of these things that most people would never even think to ask. So thank you for that. Because I would never think to ask and truthfully for me, if I have to use an in-house AV, even if I was going to use it anyway, it's almost always a deal breaker in my contracts, just because there's so many things where they have the upper hand that AV should not be something that they have the upper hand in.
Right.
Who is your ideal client? Like, who could I send you a ton of?
For me, so I'm really liking this technical producer niche. It's something I've been trying to promote as I kind of go into it. So for me, it's either that independent planner who is putting together their own team, right? So they usually have their associates that they bring in for registration. They've got maybe some ideas of what they want for AV, but they're not themselves particularly technical. And so I really enjoy being the person that you can just go here to all of the technical stuff, right? So let me get the bids for you. Let me line them all up. So, because that takes forever, right? Lining it all up, trying to do the apples and oranges and all this kind of stuff. Let me say, okay, I think we should go with these guys, and here's why. Let me then negotiate on your behalf, saying, okay, that's really expensive. What can we do? Let me say, okay, you don't need that equipment, because that's ridiculous overkill. You don't need subwoofers in a breakout session. And then be there on site to make sure that it all goes well. So, when you're hiring a production company, that kind of comes along with the package. But if you're just putting together that small team, so I would say, first of all, those independent, meeting planners and event planners that just need someone that can offload all of the tech to. But then also there's this other category of event planners and meeting planners that don't self-identify as meeting and event planners. which is tough because, right, they're not necessarily the ones that are going to be listening to this, this podcast or this show. And so, I'm trying to find ways of getting to the folks that are admin assistants, that they're marketing people, that are, the ones that are just, given an event, go here, plan this, and so, and so they're the ones that, that wind up becoming de facto planners, and do a really great job in a lot of instances, but aren't necessarily the ones that are, this is what they went to school for or something along those lines. And again, just need that techie person that they can hand the stuff off of. And then kind of the third avenue of that is people who've built up a show to a certain point. They know they want to take it to the next level, but again, they're not ready to hire in a full production company to do it. It's just like, we just need a guy. They can, I just love that. I love that phrase, like, because everybody's got a guy. I got a guy that can get me that. I got a guy. Oh, you need a guy that can get you that? Yeah, I got a guy. So, that kind of thing. So just, I'm your guy.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I definitely think that there are some people that I do want to connect you with in general, because I think one of the niches that might be good for you is the influencer space, the coaches, the consultants, the thought leaders that are putting on events that are perhaps hiring out the individual event planner who doesn't have you but needs you. So I think that might be a good niche too for us to give you guys some business. Tell us where we can find you.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm easy to find. I'm Brandt Krueger on all the socials, BRANDTKRUEGER, BrandtKrueger.com. So pretty much everywhere except Facebook, because I've got reasons. And so, but yeah, I'm pretty much all over the place. Be sure and check out the podcasts. That's something that I continue to enjoy doing so many years later. I'm on the Event Icons podcast, as well as the Event Tech podcast. So Event Icons is event-icons.com because the guy won't sell it. And then Event Tech Podcast is eventtechpodcast.com. So that's where you can find me.
I love it. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
It's absolutely my pleasure.